iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz.
First and foremost, congratulations on this film. It's honestly one of my favorite things of the whole entire year.
Oh, great. I'm thrilled.
So my first question is, what was it about this musical, this film adaptation, that made you want to take on one of the most iconic fictional characters?
It's a challenge, isn't it? And as you get older, it's really exciting to be asked to do something you're not sure whether you can pull off, So it was really that, actually. I had seen the musical, of course, in its early days, and I'd seen Trunchbull being brilliantly, unforgettably played by Bertie Carvel, who's, obviously he's tall and muscular and just kind of so powerful. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to follow that. But I was given so much help with the costume and with the makeup, the prosthetics and all of that. I would say that, it took 5 people to create Trunchbull, and I just happened to be one of them.
Alisha, I want to start with you. What was your absolute favorite thing about being Matilda, taking over this role as Matilda?
Well, my favorite thing, out of all of it, was definitely getting to be a completely different person and leave myself behind and turn into a completely different character. And I love how brave and kind she is, and throughout the story she meets lots of different characters, and some are mean and some are nice, but she's just finding a way to put things right for herself. And when you're watching it, Matilda brings you through so many different emotions, so I think you kind of go through the emotions with her.
Besides the outfit and the 3 hours of makeup, which I'm sure was a process in itself, what was the most challenging thing for you to embody Miss Trunchbull?
I think probably Matthew Warchus's, our director's, injunction or desire for her to be absolutely psychologically real. That she's a human being. Mm-hmm. This is film, it's not pantomime, it's not the theater. She's got to be real. And so when you look in her eyes, because you can get close to her, you see her very up close. You have to believe that she's who she is. So yes, delving into her psychology and her own terrible childhood, that was the real work, I think.
Matthew, you've directed every production of Matilda, and to take on the movie direction, did you kind of have to step back and look at it as a completely new story to do the film?
Yeah, that's exactly what I had to do. And I think the amount of time, the original production on stage was directed more than 12 years ago. And that amount of time really helped me. I had 10 years to think and to talk to Dennis Kelly, the writer, and to, some of the things that work so well on stage would be a disaster on film, and the things that theatre does that film can't begin to do, and vice versa. So it really required understanding what the strengths of film were, and then working out how to translate the piece that we put so much love into on stage, and to put that love into it in a different form that would, and I found that very exciting. It was a responsibility and a big pressure to not get it wrong, but I found it exciting to be able to expand the story and change it a little bit in places, but really populate it in a new way, and to be able to get the camera close to performances, right up to faces, of course, was an exciting thing to do with such an emotional story.
When I said yes to the job, I don't think I quite understood how good Matthew was, that he'd won Tonys and stuff. I think at some point I looked him up and went, oh shit, I better be good here, and over the period of writing the songs, I kind of realized that Peter Darling and Rob Howell and Hugh Vanstone and Chris Nightingale, all these people, I realized that I was in the big leagues, I think Matthew always had very strong sense that if we got it right, it could go to the West End. And then, I remember at some point after it opened thinking, oh, this is good. But even in my wildest dreams, I didn't think it would still be running in 2022 on the West End. And, I don't know how many productions there are in the world right now.
One of the things I loved is from the stage to the screen, she's almost a quiet sinister in this adaptation. And I'm
Mm.
curious the choice to make her a little bit on the quieter side to bring that sinister character out a little bit more.
That was Matthew definitely wanted her to be chilling. And people who shout, generally speaking, aren't chilling. And if you
Mhm.
read the book, she shouts all the time. So that's one version. But he wanted her, I think psychologically as well, you know, someone who has that that deep inner pain. They're not shouters. Often they're not shouters. They're that kind of very quiet, just
Right.
because she doesn't need to raise her voice. She's so frightening that as soon as she turns up, everyone shuts up and listens. You know, so her being quiet, and everyone paying attention is one way of making her even more powerful.
What was one of the most challenging things for you to do for this film?
The most challenging scene for me to do, but also one of my favorites to do, was the bit in Naughty where I go upside down and I walk on my hands on the roof and I sing. It was probably the hardest because I had to get the hang of like walking up there and like not falling down, but I also had to sing. That was probably the hardest, but it was still probably one of my favorites to do.
With the stage version, you have so much to work with, but then having to take the film, and I know there were some probably difficult choices of what to keep and what to cut, especially with like the parent songs were cut, Loud was cut. Were those difficult choices for you all to have to make for the film?
Yeah, and the reason they were difficult is they were so good. We filmed those, all the bits that are missing from the stage show have been filmed, and the performances were really wonderful. And so in the end, it's a tough thing to do, but it's about creating a shape for a film, you know, and a rhythm for a film, and the requirements of that, the optimum shape, is an interesting discussion to have. So yeah, I found it a tough thing to do, but you know, and I think in a way it was made more difficult because the people that I was working with were so skilled, which was, you know, a positive way of looking at it in a way. They were so brilliant. So Andrea Riseborough, Stephen Graham had their songs cut, but they give amazing performances in the film, you know, and hopefully the audience won't miss those because a lot of people will be coming to this film not knowing the stage musical beforehand.
And working alongside Emma Thompson has to be one of the most memorable things for you. What was that like working with Emma?
It was amazing, and she taught me so much, like when I was really looking up to her because there were so many people there and she'd done loads of these before, so I was just really looking up to all of the people that were there, just so I could learn off them.
When I got told we could have Emma Thompson, I just couldn't believe. I mean, I've just been in love with her my whole adult life, and I've got to meet her a few times. So I already had met her, and I knew she was a fan of Matilda, and we'd talked about another project. But I just couldn't believe it. And to watch her transformation and that costume, I wasn't a part of all this stuff. I was sitting in Australia, getting on with my show, you know, making my TV show, and this stuff just people had sent me photos, and I just couldn't believe the thoroughness and the amazing work. That all said, it's about Lashana and Alisha. I mean, and then you got Stephen Graham and Andrea Riseborough, for God's sake. I mean, there's some of the best actors on the planet, like the most serious, dramatic actors on the planet, you know, rocking it in as Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood. It's comic roles, but they have that truth under their performance, so they're actually scary, the Wormwoods. But Lashana, who, you know, I already knew. I remember seeing her in Captain Marvel or whatever and just going, who is that woman? I was just like, who is that? She was like funny and smart and strong, and then 007, and now she's in The Woman King, and she plays these huge, strong, powerful roles. And I'm just blown away by her performance and her softness. But more than that, this connection that she and Alisha have from the very first time you see them. You know, for the very first time Miss Honey walks in and Matilda's sitting on the stairs overhearing this conversation about how they haven't sent her to school. And you just fall in love with them. You fall in love with them as a pair.
The last question, what do you want people to take away from this film after they've left their couch or movie theater?
Well, the importance of courage, the importance of protest in the face of injustice and cruelty and bigotry, the importance of standing up to be counted, and the importance of family who might not be your family, to understand that your family might not be good for you. They're not always good for you. And that it's absolutely possible to make strong, familial, deep, deep bonds and connections with people you're not actually related to. These are wonderful things to say in a movie.
iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz.